Okay, I'm going to call to order the Lenox Public Schools School Committee meeting of June 13th, 2022. And the first order of business is the hearing of visitors. And I'll remind visitors that comments about personnel are not acceptable during public comment.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
You
I
may.
just have one question that anybody that can answer. I asked Mr. Bond over the weekend. Where's Bentley? The school dog. I got kids, I got parents, I made a mistake of going grocery shopping on a Saturday morning. You know, it's like, I'm not even on the committee anymore, but if these kids are upset, the dog needs to be in the building.
So right now Bentley is with Mr. Pitt.
So by close of day tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, the dog can return to school and somebody else can take charge of the dog so these kids can simmer down their panic attacks. I never saw, he's a stress relief animal and he causes more stress.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I get it. And unfortunately, I can't comment right now on that. And we have a plan in place. And certainly we'll share that as soon as we're able.
But hopefully by the end of the year.
Yeah. Oh,
Or you can get back to me on that.
Yeah.
I answer emails. So don't thanks.
I got it. Thank you.
Is there other public comment? Okay, hearing none, I have no correspondence. I have correspondence, but it's going to come up later regarding the 10th grade civics projects. We'll bring that up later on in the meeting. School committee meeting minutes of May 16th, 2022.
Accept the minutes of May 16th, 2022.
Any discussion, editing?
I noticed there was no mention of Mr. Pixley. Speaking.
Yeah, I thought, funny.
Unless I missed it.
No, I thought there had,
If you remember, we had comment, public comment, and then it ended. And so it was later, because we might not be in that section.
It's in there.
Is it?
I put it in with public comment, even though it wasn't it wasn't right directly following Mr. Berry, but it was part of public comment, so that's where I put it at the very end.
The last line.
Private or I see of order, correspondence, hearing of visitors, environmental club, public
Right
comment.
Look right above environmental.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I thought it was broken out in, I apologize.
any other comments?
My bad.
Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, subcommittee assignments. The governance and leadership has been, Christine has been the chairman, Megan and I were members. Is that the way we'd like to keep it? Is there anybody is there anybody else who'd like to be on governance and leadership? Okay. Okay, finance was myself, Oren, and Christine. And anybody else wish to be on that? I'm good with that. Teaching and learning was Veronica, David, and Bob.
Fine.
Okay. HR was myself, Megan, and Oren. Veronica has expressed an interest in being in it, and I'm willing to drop off of that, subject to. Oh, I guess we did. Oh, a fire truck's coming out.
We thought here of the exercises next door.
Yeah, governance, leadership, finance, and TLC are staying the same. And on human resources, I'm going to drop off, and Veronica's going to join that. And school building was Bob and me. That still good to go? Okay. School committee goal setting session. it came up during some of the MASC documents on their website about superintendent evaluation, that a good process, which we haven't done in the past, is to have an opportunity for the school committee to set some goals initially and then have the superintendent work from the goals. Now, we have a strategic plan, but we may wish to actually set some specific goals for 2023, for example, 22, 23. So, what I was looking for was to see if we could come up with a time. We don't have to do it tonight if it's not simple, but to come up with a time for either a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting, or some people in person, some on Zoom, when we could do something perhaps in July, even though I know July may be difficult for people. So that then when we get to August, the superintendent can set his goals, for the upcoming year based on, what we may have come up with. So this would be, like adding an additional retreat kind of meeting, perhaps with the assistance of our MASC rep, Liz LaFond. We, depending on her availability, we could do it ourselves, but we may wish to have her. So is there anybody for whom July is just absolutely, gone? Or I'm sorry?
I can do it. As long as you're flexible, meaning if Zoom attendance will work. I can-
Okay, so maybe what we can do is have Amy send out a doodle to try to actually narrow down some possible dates, and then go from there.
May I ask if school committee members have dates they're not available for July, please let me know, and then I won't include those in the doodle.
Yeah.
Otherwise it could be one of the dates.
Yeah, because if you're on vacation, I don't think you necessarily want to Zoom into a, you might be what you do, but. Okay, graduation summary. I'll speak first, but others who may have been at the graduation may wish to speak. I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. We had 66 graduates. We had a number of speakers. The weather cooperated. The speeches were excellent and well received. And it was I thought it was a good ceremony, and I applaud the kids who just graduated. If you were there on their scholarship night and you heard Mr. Kneibel or maybe it was Mark say that they like 1.4 million in either scholarships from Lenox or scholarships from the colleges, astounding number. It's about what I spent for my kids to go to college, but I'd like to get it back. But it was a really nice ceremony, and
It was a wonderful ceremony. Thanks to everybody for helping together. It was nice to be back at Tanglewood. It's nice to be back in person. It was really lovely.
yeah, the band was great. Every aspect of it seemed to go pretty smoothly. So
I also, I wouldn't say a similar thing, but I thought it was terrific, and I really thought that our values as a community, as a school community, shone through very brightly in the entire program, and it just made me very, very proud to be a member of this community, and very proud of our students in our district.
okay, the next item, independent audit of response to bullying reports. A couple of members came to me in triggered perhaps by the Mr. Pixley's concerns at the last meeting, and followed up with his responses to us, his written responses to us, that this might be an opportunity for us to have an independent audit of not just this particular response, but using this as a starting point to see, where in the process did we fail Mr. Pixley's daughter. And that could be, this could be kind of a case study, but what I'd like to do. I've contacted our law firm, and they have some people who could do an independent audit and do this kind of work. I haven't spoken to them since I contacted them last week, pending what we decide tonight. But they were going to get in touch with me early this week. Now, we only have a week of school to go, which makes this, tricky, but there's a certain expedient, there's a certain need for an expediency to try to get something going if we're going to get information about the specifics of this particular case. And what I would like to do with the attorneys when they contact me, they're going to contact me via Zoom first, is be able to articulate what we'd like the scope of a study to be. Whether we'd like to look at other reports of bullying and how they were followed up, or not. What kind of numbers of bullying reports. If you look on the DESE website over the last 8 years, there's been one instance of, or not the last 8 years, but the 8 that were relevant, 2020 backwards. There's only one instance that actually resulted in a student missing time in school. Now, whether that's accurate or not, that's what's reported. And it's not dissimilar from other districts. So you can't really learn a lot from that. But presumably there are bullying reports that exist in the building for other students who may have experienced this and reported, or parents or teachers. So it would be an opportunity for an independent audit of the bullying practices and procedures that we follow and how well we're following them. So I'll open it up to any.
I will just say that we did at our, so when we report about TLC, I won't repeat, but at our TLC meeting, we basically talked about this because it does come under culture, and there have been other concerns about, and it's come up in the past about how are we responding, and there was a conversation at that meeting about approaching it and having a goal. And so I think moving forward to get more information. The other thing we talked about is the fact that we initially convened the anti-bullying task force and created the policy based upon the state response, and looking out at Sorrentino, who was part of that. We had a multi-disciplinary part of it, but that was a good 12 years ago that we did that. So part of me is feeling like that was in response to the immediate change in law after the issue that happened in South Hadley, and then a recognition that there's concerns across the state. And so really, if we want to look at how do we move forward, we look at what have we done since 2010 and what's happened since then, and then how do we amend things and move forward and follow it with best practices. I mean, at a minimum, 2010, we can think about the change in internet, social media, how kids interact with each other outside of the actual in front of a parent, teacher, et cetera. So I think that there's a lot to be looked at, and that to make changes just because we think we might need to make them without getting a full picture about where we have been, where we are, and where we need to go, I think would be a little short-sighted. So I think the idea of being very planful, getting data, getting information, and then engaging the community is really, really, really important. So I'm in favor of it, but I also want to say it isn't coming from just one situation that we became aware of in that moment, but it's broader than that. And I don't want anyone to think that we're being reactive. I think, in fact, it's been an ongoing conversation, at least at the TLC committee, in more general ways throughout the year.
I can just speak for myself, but I can't help but feel like a lot of the issues that are going on in our district right now are systemic issues. And so I'm questioning whether this is the best approach to hire somebody from the outside to kind of come in and tell us what we're doing wrong. I think it shows also that we're missing or lacking something in our internal systems, right? So where is the breakdown happening? Is it a lack of understanding and training with administration, staff, teachers? I don't know. This is my first year on the committee, so I won't tend to have all the answers. I don't. But I would be interested in kind of looking at it as a group. What are our current procedures, and then we can talk about having someone from the outside come in. But I don't see much benefit to doing it in this order. Does that make sense?
Could we have a little bit more just background on sort of how we've arrived at this point? I mean, I know there was a policy developed in, literally a decade ago. Ronnie, I hear you saying there's sort of, this is now sort of an ongoing issue that there have been discussions about. I guess I'm not familiar with any discussions, so whether it's things that have been going on in the TLC subcommittee or things that the administration's been working on. I think it would be helpful to hear a little more about what we've tried already.
So I can certainly speak to what we've tried already. With our administrative team, we have been very intentional during our administrative meetings to engage in training with our folks around bullying, what Mass General Law is, what our own bullying policies are, where to find the documents and resources to provide parents when they're bullying complaints. The expectation was then for each building principal to turn that around at a staff meeting to their staff, and also let them know that bullying complaints need to be, or the bullying policy needs to be followed, and that complaints need to be shared with administration, and that student actions or misbehavior when it occurs needs to be documented, and that needs to be shared. And so that's what we've done thus far. I was surprised to find that some of our folks had trouble finding the documents that were listed in the policy. And so we did chase those down and make sure that we have them, and we'll have electronic versions for that moving forward. I think we should also convert the bullying submission form into a easy to fill out digital form, so that it's very easy for folks to send that along, and then we can help us that lands and it's tracked. So those are some of the in-house kind of things that we've done so far this year. 2/3 of our administrative team were new, and so out of fairness to them, they may not have had training in this initially when they joined the district. So we wanted to make sure that everybody knew what the expectations were, what the policy was, and we're clear about how we go about implementing that. So that's where we are at this point, at least from what we've done in-house. Now, historically, I can't speak to.
I just want to speak a little bit to, I think, at various points, any one of us, I think, have had conversations, whether it's members of the community or in various settings, about issues of families having a hard time. Now, speaking only for myself, when a member of the committee calls me and has a concern or wants to brainstorm, I immediately refer them to who's appropriate within the line of administration. I typically follow up with an email and say, I heard from Mr. Jones and Ms. Smith, et cetera, and this is what their concerns are, and I try to follow a protocol of bringing people back into the fold. But as a community, as a small community, people sometimes also say, hey, I'm having this issue. I mean, I think sometimes it's also a parent to parent, when you have your first child in middle school, you begin to say, gee, how should I handle this? So I try to send people in certain directions. But as a result of many of those conversations, I do have some concerns that the exact protocols that we were part of developing may not be followed consistency. And yet I recognize that that's not helpful. If I've talked to 3 people, and in those 3 cases, it wasn't followed consistency, that's not a global understanding about what has happened. And I think it's really important that if we go forward and we want to change things, or we want to adjust things, or we want to actually be doing the best possible work we can do for our community and our children and the Lenox public schools, I think it'd be helpful to know, is there something significant that isn't happening, that's missing, that we need to add? And again, I think that the issue of some of the ways in which communication and bullying can happen that are outside the purview of the public school itself, or sometimes within it, with the way social media can be accessed in so many places, that it would be helpful. So to the extent that what you're asking is for some history, I think there was a past conversation actually at a retreat years ago, and Sorrentino was on the committee at that time, where there was a question and discussion about, similar to what we're having now, are we following protocols? Are we following procedure? Are we? And I just think it's helpful for us to really know where are we? Are we doing what we need to do? Are we following the best practices? Where do we need to adjust? And that gives us the time to then implement that with some good, robust conversation and training in the fall.
No, I totally agree with everything you just said, Ronnie. My question is whether we tried to do that. Yeah. because my expectation would be that it is within the competence and purview of this committee and Mark and his administration to look at exactly that set of issues and see what we can understand, and certainly before we sort of make people sit down for interviews with lawyers, I would want to attempt to address the issue as a community. Typically, at least in my experience, you sort of turn to the independent audit, either if the people who would typically do the investigation are implicated in it, or if you have tried and failed internally to have, bringing a law firm be the first step, I think, and I don't mean first step in terms of anything we've ever done, but first step in response to our collective decision we need to be doing more. I think Megan put it well that's sort of backward, and I do want us to be thoughtful about what it means in practice and what it will look and feel like to members of the school community to go through an independent audit. There are times when that's absolutely appropriate and necessary, but for instance, as far as I can tell, and certainly we have yet to have a discussion about what might have broken down or why. Sort of there's something of a paper trail out there that we could start from. There are folks we could talk to. I think it would certainly make more sense for it to be saying that the administration takes the lead on and then reports back on, as opposed to us trying to sort of do it in some sort of open session. I think it's going to be terrific to have the TLC subcommittee really dig in on, and that's one of the reasons I asked. It's clear that these sort of things are in the air. My sense is that there hasn't been an effort within the TLC subcommittee to actually take any action to this point. And so I'd really like to see us at least try that. And if we get to September, October, and we say either, gosh, what we found is really serious, this needs to be escalated, we can't handle it, then there are further steps to take. But to do that first, and especially in the last week of school, and especially, I think there's obviously a lot going on at the high school in particular right now, to pull in a law firm on top of it, just strikes me as counterproductive at this point.
So here's my counterpoint. For years, I've been in the seat, and every year something bubbles up. Every year. And the way we address it is we say, we'll let the administration handle it. And yet every year something bubbles back up again. To Megan's point, I think it probably is systemic. Where is this systemic? If it's in the administration, we can't ask them to go ferret that out themselves. So the TLC committee doesn't have time or the resource, or really should be even looking at that kind of information that deeply. So we said, let's go find somebody on the outside, take a look and see if there's gaps or holes or places where stuff is gone off the rails from our policy and what we're intending to do. And we need to do it fast because summer's coming up. So we thought by bringing in somebody on the outside, it's actually a credibility step where we're saying, look, we're not involved in this, administration's not involved in this, we've got somebody else taking a look to make sure that this is being covered thoroughly. And that's not to say the HR and the school committee will drop out of the picture, but it was the most expedient way to get a very thorough look from the top all the way down through. Because the complaint I hear year after year is nothing ever happens, nothing changes. So I don't know how to make a change without knowing what the problem is. If there is a problem, maybe there isn't.
I mean, I think you just said, if they do know, first of all, it seems to be very unfair to cast on Mark the experience of the past, 4 or 5 years of not having a stable permanent superintendent. And at minimum, I would want to, I think Mark actually has some expertise on this area and has certainly started to dig into it. I think we should have some confidence in him to chase that down. And then secondly, I would just say, I think it's really important that the committee not speak in the passive voice about this. I mean, if you feel that year after year, this has come up and there's nothing's been done, I mean, not to be rude about it, but you are a member of the school committee. And so
And that's why I'm trying to get something to happen now. Because every other avenue, I feel like we've tried.
But that's my question, is
We're
what
still
other,
having,
what other
we're still
avenues have
having the
we
issues
tried?
come up.
Have we ever actually initiated a process through the school committee? Have we ever set a basic?
This is the
timeline?
process I want to initiate.
Okay. So I think, and this is the question is this the right first process? And just to offer an alternative, what I think we could do, I think we as a committee could say, this is very important. We actually need to dig into this further than we have in the past. And so we expect at the September, whatever it meeting, a presentation from the administration that's going to cover off on these 4 issues. In between now and then, the TLC subcommittee is going to meet with the administration 3 times. And here's what we expect to see discovered at each of those and steps in terms of better processes and proposals in place. And in September, we're going, and right, and then, and if that doesn't work, then we say, clearly we can't handle this. But that's what actually taking action looks like, is actually putting in place and setting off a process to cause change to happen. And I think we are capable of that, and I certainly think we should try.
I just want to add a couple of points though. I hear you, and I don't agree with that approach because we as a school committee are limited in the manner in which we can engage publicly and privately. We can't interfere in personnel. We do not have the ability to, I mean, to the extent that the public can come and talk to us anecdotally, if we convene any kind of a meeting, that's a public session, unless we have the right to go into executive session, which, as all of us know from our training, we can only do under certain circumstances, and it specifically cannot include personnel. So I feel like the nature of being a body such as this is that we don't have the ability to engage in the way that you're talking about the TLC being able to, and we can certainly have meetings and we can have conversations and discussions about problems or about societal issues, about recommendations. We can bring a policy forward, and I'm thinking, and this is Bob who's talked about this a lot, of an idea of sort of a parallel conversation is looking in best practices and training and supporting professional development. But the type of information that we might need that's independent and thorough, we are not empowered to actually do that. In fact, the law specifically says there's certain things that we are not allowed to do. So that's the counterpoint to the counterpoint to the counterpoint is they have done it on SNL back in the day. So anyway, and I won't belabor because I know we have a vote. And we'll see how everybody is and what other people have their points to put out. But that's one of the concerns I have, is that as a TLC, we do open as public meeting. We only have limited ability to go to executive session. We don't have the ability to communicate directly or interfere in any personnel matters, and we can go on and on. Confidentiality, therapeutic confidentiality, you know, we can do all the initials. So.
And Warren, one of the things, your approach is sound. Problem is it's like, and the more time we take, the more kids. So I like to try to get to something quickly.
Unfortunately, it's the last week of school, so we actually have about three months.
To make the plan, try it out on kids.
Well, that's what would happen if we brought in a third party. I mean, I do think it's just to play this out. So we do an independent audit. We literally pay lawyers to come in and investigate these issues, speak to people, et cetera. They're presumably going to prepare a report that's going to come to us, that we're going to have to hear, just as we would hear a report that the administration were to prepare. So the only question here is, who do we want to have be the initial actor digging into this and bringing back recommendations? Do we want to have the administration do it first? Again, an administration that's never been asked to do it, as far as I can tell, and that I think we should have competency to do it. Or do we prefer our first call to be to the law firm? There are no issues of what we as a school committee can or cannot do. There are no issues of confidentiality. We will be playing the same role either way. We have to see, we have to oversee the law firm if we hire them. The question is, who do we want to send in to work on this? I would choose the administration. but that's what I'm saying.
One of the concerns I have, and I'm in favor of the external audit, but is the time issue. Because I haven't spoken to the people who do it yet. And that, let's say that's tomorrow, then we've got 7 days of school left. And without having spoken to them about the scope and what they could do in that time frame, while school's closing, I'm not sure. I think this is something we need to do. I am concerned about the time frame. Because if I talk to someone tomorrow and I was going to link in to the Zoom meeting, a couple members of the TLC committee to help with defining the scope. But in terms of the immediacy of being able to talk to teachers and students, it's a very, very limited time frame during a time that I imagine high school kids are taking exams, probably. I don't know exactly what the exam schedule is, but so I am concerned about that. I'm in favor in general of doing it, but I do have concerns about the time frame. And
I mean, I'm in favor of it because it's a bit of self-examination and I think that at times sort of dovetailing a little bit on what Bob had mentioned, that it may very well be necessary to have a fresh set of eyes. And that's why I support this. I think a lot of us are talking about scope here, but that hasn't even yet been defined. I think that there is a time is of the essence component to this, but I think there's also I think there's also a component of it that is if something is systemic, which God forbid, then I don't really see where it's going to be like rushing in and we're going to, why hasn't anyone looked at this before? So but anyway, so in general, I just kind of support this idea.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
you may.
It all comes down to time. If everything's handled in a timely manner, it helps. And it is most difficult to get a student to fill out any bullying report. They're afraid of repercussions. They're embarrassed. There's just a lot that goes into it. I've been working on this for 18 years. It's a struggle. I've seen a lot of kids hurt. I've seen a lot of adults hurt. Every one of you, myself included, were mandated reporters. Something comes to you, you report it immediately. You do not make that decision. Oh, well, maybe it isn't serious. Maybe it's just kids being kids. That is not up to you. Report it. Let the officials figure it out. We have a school resource office. We have a chief of police that'll come down in a hiccup. If there's an issue, deal with it then. Don't let 6, 7, 8 months go down. What was it, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe now, the retreat. Nothing still moved from that, Ronnie.
Yeah, I was on
Except
board
I got a
with that.
reputation. That was all. So I just think it's time to get it done right. And personally, nothing against Drew Mark, nothing against Knievel, nothing against anybody. I don't think that the administration can do it correctly. Bring the law firm in and get it done right. And don't we have somebody on retainer?
We do, but this would be above and beyond that because of the amount of time that would be.
Well, let's get it done right. Let's come up with something that's gonna stick.
And I don't have a
And
clue
let's
what
make it
the,
a safe haven for our kids.
I don't have, at this point, I don't even have a sense of what the cost would be. I mean, that's something that,
Ronnie will break your interest.
well, I'd accept a motion one way or the other to,
Chairman, I make a motion that the Lenox Public School Committee conduct an audit into recent allegations that the administration has handled its response to reports of student bullying. I further move that the committee engage the services of an outside firm in its investigation.
I'll second that.
yeah, so let's make sure that Amy has that.
Motion to get.
Well, I have, conduct, and then I switched to engage an outside organization because I lost the first part.
So I move to the Lenox Public School Committee conduct an audit in the recent allegations that the administration mishandled its response to reports of student bullying.
Mishandled reports of bullying.
Student. I further move that the committee engage the service of an outside firm to lead said investigation for audit.
Outside firm. Motion by Ariane that LPS conduct an audit from these allegations.
One more time to the top.
That LPS conduct an audit from recent
Into recent allegations that the administration
mishandled reports of bullying and further move that the school committee engage an outside firm.
No, like that, it says the administration mishandled its response
Okay.
to reports of student bullying.
Student bullying.
I further move that the committee engage the services of an outside firm to lead said audit.
I second that.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to make a comment if I can.
Yeah.
Guys, cut somebody off. So ultimately, I'm just gonna dive right into it. So what I want as a committee member is accountability. So if there is something going on within the district that's been covered up, or it's been dismissed or kind of shoved aside until, people forget about it, I want those people held accountable. I also have to say, I'm sitting here at a table of people who heard about some pretty significant news coming out of the high school by opening the front page of the Berkshire Eagle, as did many teachers in this room, I assume. I am going back and forth on my vote here, but I think after listening to everyone's input that it's best if the administration stays out of this investigation.
I'm just not sure, did we just set the scope of the,
No, we haven't set the scope because
did the motion set the scope?
Yeah, that would be my concern, is that the motion specifically requests an audit into the mishandling of a specific recent incident. If that's what we're trying to investigate, that's fine, but I don't think there's anything in such a process that would produce the kinds of outputs I just heard from others were primarily looking for.
I don't think the motion is limited to one incident. It does say response to reports, not a recent report.
And Bob, this is your motion that I seconded, but I don't want to go through the process of amendments, so I just might make a comment that you could take for what it's worth, which is whether in the second part, say engage an outside firm to review or audit our policies, practices, and procedures, procedures, and compliance, so that, and make recommendations, because the added amount would be to ensure that we are in alignment with not just compliance with the law, but best practices, which can include some stuff that I think we might not have in our current policies. we're gonna do it, I'm going, we might as well.
We could also say to include but not limited to.
Hello.
Say something like that, or just strike that part.
It sounds like we had an idea in mind for the case study anyway, so would it be fair to make that a priority area of investigation
The,
and go from there?
the specific
Yes,
instance that,
Yes. Yeah. And then whatever else they, right, yeah. I can get on board with that.
anybody
Do you think
else?
It needs to change, I mean, sometimes it's just opinion, but we're voting on it, so do we think it needs to change or that it's good the way it is?
I think as long as we don't limit it, which it sounds like we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you could repeat the motion one more time, Amy.
Motion by RM and seconded by VF that Lenox Public Schools conduct an audit into recent allegations. That administration mishandled its response to reports of student bullying, and further move that the school committee engage the services of an outside firm to lead said audit.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't limit, that's not limiting.
Does say recent, but
I don't think that was sort of defines the starting point.
Any further comment?
Well, do we want to have, do we want to say anything about timing? It sounds like for this to be effective, we want it to start now. This is not something we're just having in September and October.
The law firm had indicated that they could start this week. That said, I was going to hear from them either today or tomorrow, and I didn't hear from them today unless I missed an email or something. And that was going to be an initial Zoom meeting that I was going to have with perhaps Bob and Dave or Dave and Veronica, two of the members of the TLC, to help set the scope and talk with the law firm, and also to find out A, cost, B, what can they do in, what can they do in a certain time frame, and what beyond that, might need to, what would happen during the summer, what would have to happen during the fall. If, and again, I don't think we can keep it so open-ended, thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent, but we do need to look, we do need to set the scope and talk realistically with the law firm about what is possible between now and Tuesday, next Tuesday, and or perhaps beyond that, but so.
Last time I checked, the administration works all year, so. Back to the teachers and some current feedback now.
Email's a beautiful thing.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll start with some highlights and recognitions. This is an exciting time of year, obviously, and since we've last been together, LMHS held a great prom at the Stables of the Mount on Friday, May 20th. Kids had a great time. It's an interesting prom. There was certainly dancing, but also kind of a new pivot to playing more games and doing some other types of things as well. So it was kind of a unique event and a lot of fun for everybody. We also had senior class day on June 8th, and the class day is where students receive department awards. And so that was probably one of the highlights of the year for me to see our graduating class assembled on the stage wearing their caps and gowns for the first time, and being honored for all of the hard work and effort they put in and all their accomplishments. So that was a wonderful event. Followed the next night on the 9th by senior awards night. I think Bobby alluded to this earlier, where we had 33 students who were praised for having a GPA of 3.5 or better, which is no small feat in a high school of any size. And that collectively they've received over $1.4 million in scholarships and awards. Again, no small achievement. So they did an amazing job. The senior class was exceptional. So they deserve all the best as they move forward. Yesterday we had graduation. It was an amazing event. I think the weather was great. We had a great crowd. It was nice to come together as a community, I think, and celebrate those exceptional students. And again, just want to underscore the pride that we have for the valedictorian, Piper Maximilian, and salutatorian, Fiona Matthews. I also want to share that related to graduation, that COVID introduced lots of new things, virtual learning and all types of others. But one of the things that it also introduced to many communities, Lenox included, is graduation lawn signs. And so it's a small gesture, but it was something that I felt that we really wanted to cling to go out and show the community that we're proud of our kids. And so we decided to spend a little bit of money to have those signs printed up. And some teachers in the high school have designed them for us. And we were able to get them printed and get them distributed. And I think, as you drive around, you see them, it's kind of a nice touch. And so we're happy to hold on to that as a tradition and hope that we continue to cling to that. We have some end of the year events also kind of coming up in the LMHS. So we have middle school concert tomorrow night, 7 p.m. in Duffin. We have our grade 8 celebration on June 21st at 6:00 p.m. in the Duffin, and that will be followed by a middle school dance from 7 to 9 in the cafeteria. And that's sort of the last hurrah for our 8th graders before they head off into the summer and transition over to being freshmen and high schoolers. The last day of school for all students is Wednesday, June 22nd, and it's a half day. Morris also has some exciting end of the year events that have taken place since we've last met. One of the highlights has to be the girls in the run ran a 5K on June 5th. But before that, on May 17th, they had a practice 5K. And there was an amazing turnout of staff and parents who came to cheer them on and give them encouragement as they ran a course from Morris down to Tanglewood and back. I think the thing that really struck me was the participation of a number of high school students who helped hand out awards and prizes and helped cheer the kids on. And I think that that's a great step to trying to bridge the divide that sometimes you can have between two buildings. And so, I'm really grateful for those high schoolers who went above and beyond to support those students.
Just a note on that, I happen to be running down to pick up my car that day. And all of a sudden I've got 20 girls plus a lot of faculty, plus Piper Maximilian, plus all these people coming down the street toward me. And it was really nice to see. I didn't realize that was I didn't realize, I thought they did that every week. I didn't realize that was their practice 5K. I'm sorry? I was going the other direction and it turned out to be a lot longer. I've run it many times, but it seemed to be longer the other day. But it was great seeing the kids out there and seeing Piper and a lot of adults were with them too.
And Piper was with the program all year as a coach. And she talked about that in her speech. And so it was a profound moment for her as an individual, but also I think for the elementary students as well. If you're unfamiliar with Girls in the Run, it's a running program that couples physical activity, but also with lessons each session. Tailored to young girls during a transitional period before adolescence. It talks about social, emotional wellness and health, positivity, and gives them some great social skills. And so it's something that I've had the experience of starting in a few other districts along the way, and I think is a fantastic program. So when they had the opportunity to continue it here and they asked for my support, I said, absolutely, it's one of my very favorite things for young girls. So I was really pleased to see that Morris already had a club up and running. So this Thursday at Morris, grade 5 will make their trip to Boston. And you may have seen on our social media that the 5th graders have been raising money for this trip, which culminated in an assembly where they were going to throw pies. They don't throw, but pies in the faces of teachers based on the money that they awarded, that they earned for certain teachers to receive the pieing. And so it was super fun. They raised $700 toward their trip. And it was a great way to have a fun Friday on June 3rd before heading into the weekend. So Great job, 5th grade. You know, they did a really nice job with it. And then the following Friday, so it's Fun Fridays are like a theme here at Morris, was Field Day. And I know that I saw some of you folks there as well. I saw Warren running a game in the cafeteria for some of the kids, and it was a great day. We had lots of fun events. I was really struck by the creativity of the events. You know, it's not, some people think field day being more of a traditional kind of Olympic style, you know, thing. You have to be an athlete to win medals and this kind of thing, and it's totally not that. It's low organization games. They're really fun. They're cooperative and creative, and so I think the kids had a really nice time. And I think it de-emphasizes competition, but does emphasize collaboration and cooperation. And so it's a great day for the kids, and the weather was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a better day for a field day. Usually it's either blazing hot and the kids are melting, or it's cold and rainy, or, you know, you get attacked by insects, but it was perfect. So great day. That is true. And I almost wiped out in the mud. It was a little dangerous over there by home plate. And then district-wide, just wanted to also go back to May 26th at MCLA. We had Berkshire County Educator Recognition Night. And overall, across the Berkshire, 76 awardees were recognized that evening. And for Lenox, we gave out awards to Michelle Perkins, a grade 2 teacher at Morris, Robin Getson from LMHS for the 6 to 12 award, specialist Kate Olander, a technology specialist from LMHS, as well as Amy Higgins, the school adjustment counselor at LMHS. And then, I'm sorry, Kate's technology specialist at Morris. School nurse Jen Dries from LMHS for the school nurse category, and Brandy McLeod for the work in technology in the administration category. So everybody came and had a great night,
Nice.
and it was really nice to come together once again to celebrate our educators, both from Lenox, but also from the rest of the county as well. And now we'll move on to hiring and vacancy updates. So let me just open this here. So recently on June 6th, we had Lily Pereira start as a instructional tech support and PD specialist, which is a newly created position to provide both hardware and software support, but also to support the work of teachers as they try to integrate technology into their instruction. She is training right now to be our champion in all things Powerschool. That'll be a new student information system. And so we're happy to have her aboard and bring some of her past experiences from Pittsfield and elsewhere to us here at Lenox to help support our teachers.
Was this the position that we were trying to hire last fall when we had somebody and they left?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, slight with a slight rebranding. You know,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Randy had said, you know, I can do a lot of the tech stuff, and it's good to have another pair of hands with that. But you know, one of the real areas of need, I think, is also helping teachers solve, you know, point of instruction issues. And so we wanted to make sure that we had someone that could do that and not just, you know, run wire and cable. Yeah. We also are adding Sherilyn Zaretsky as a school adjustment counselor. She'll be transferring to this position for next year over at Morris. And the principal, Mrs. Kelly, has asked if we can add a second SAC position in lieu of a guidance counselor. So no additional position, but to change the guidance counselor to an SAC position, a school adjustment counselor. And she said that you know, they feel that the wellness and social emotional health of the students is something that would be better suited with the school adjustment counselor, but they would also be able to share the load in writing 504 plans, making sure that they're implemented. So we have recently posted that and hoping that we get some high quality applicants. The director of student services is looking to relocate, and so has resigned from her post with the district. And so we're in the process right now of interviewing candidates and then talking with the school committee, because ultimately you have to hire the director of student services in terms of how you want to finalize that process. We have 4 candidates that were identified from the paper screening round of folks who had to have the certification and some experience. So we did some preliminary interviews, and we would like to hear from the committee how they want to proceed. If you want to have a finalist or two, so that have a second round where you have an opportunity to engage with those folks, or if you want to look at a different process. So we had 2 of the first round interviews today, and 2 more coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, so this is something that we'll need to decide. One of the things that a school committee does is hire a superintendent, an assistant superintendent for business, and the director of special needs, or whatever we call it. And so we can either go on the recommendation of the superintendent and have we'll need, because this is our last scheduled meeting, we'll need to set a meeting to actually formally hire the person. It's whether or not we'd like to meet when they've identified the final 2 candidates, whether we'd like to interview them themselves or go with the recommendation of the superintendent. So.
Well, for those other 2 hires, there's typically a more robust process in terms of members of the community, perhaps members of the committee on the initial screening. Is the reason this is handled differently?
So not necessarily. We asked folks kind of what has happened in the past, and they said that there's been different approaches over the past, and that also we want to try to make sure that we're moving forward in getting this. And so in the initial round here, we again only had 4 applicants that have the necessary certification and/or experience. And then the interview panel today was teachers from the special education departments, as well as a special education parent, and then Melissa and myself. Again, if in the past school committee members were involved in that, that would be something that I was not aware of, but we can certainly build that in. And I asked Bob kind of how you want to handle it. Do you want us to do that first round, and then the second round have the chance for folks to meet candidates and have further questions answered? So again, we're willing to take whatever direction the committee feels they want to go in, but we just wanted to move because we had candidates that were sent to apply, also didn't want them to drop out of the search as well.
My suggestion would be to continue what you're doing with first round interviews with this committee, and then I would welcome the chance to bring in final candidates before the school committee. I think we have very few positions that we are actually responsible for hiring, and of that small number that Mr. Vaughn just listed, I think we take it very seriously, and it's a great opportunity for us to get to know the candidates.
The last round. I can't remember.
Well, it was when we brought in Kim Leon, but I'm not sure we interviewed.
I think there was maybe 1 member of the committee. I think it might have been that was actually on the interview committee. No,
After that.
no, maybe for the second round. It seems like one.
I sat in on 1 or 2, but I couldn't do them all, so I had to kind of withdraw from the process at the time.
But yeah, even if we have to set another meeting soon,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think it's worth it.
Yeah, the second round of interviews that Dr. Gosselin and his team are doing is tomorrow. So we would be ready fairly.
Second batch of first round.
Second batch of first round, whatever I said, correct me. And so we'll be ready fairly quickly. So if we could post this for next Monday or well, we'll skip the legal holiday. We could post it for sometime, as long, and then interview the 2 final candidates. It would require us to develop some questions for those interviews. So that might be there may be some recommended ones that you have. Ones that haven't already been asked, the candidates. And or the HR subcommittee could meet and look over questions relating to this. So we might need to meet fairly quickly to do this. But this is,
I was gonna ask, is this typically something we would do with the entire committee as opposed to, for instance, the HR subcommittee? Just both thinking about the logistics of it and the upside and downside of trying to conduct a 7 or 8 person interview. I don't know how the committee's done it in the past. Is that typically something the full committee?
well, we have to vote as a full committee. So just in terms of the kind of the practicality of timing, since we're going to have to vote as a full committee, maybe have the candidates come to us, and have, set, what we would typically do is have some set, maybe a set question each that we would ask each person, maybe 30-minute interview, 40-minute interview, something like that. Do 2 of those. I imagine you would probably bring 2 candidates.
I would hope, yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Or whatever number
Yeah.
sort of rises.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and again, we're still in that first round, so I think we'll have a better sense tomorrow, how many finalists we would have, or if we would need to go back and reopen. I mean, we want to make sure that we're really getting some high quality candidates, and so, the initial round of questions are some of the more nuts and bolts, education questions, and I can email the ones we used, today, to you, so you have a chance to kind of see those, but, and then as a committee, I also said, like, let's think about questions that, you still might want to know more about it. We didn't ask this round that, would be good questions for that second round. So we let the candidates know that there would be a second round with school committee members as well.
But Warren, to answer part of your question, I don't think we've employed this process we're talking about for director of student services before, but it's very similar to what we've done for superintendent hiring.
Yeah.
So it has worked pretty seamlessly with the full committee to have the superintendent candidates come before. I think it would be.
And I think the distinction I was trying to make was a selection process to get to the final candidates. We have in that stage of it, we always, for both your position, we've always had a committee made up of not only we've had a more robust committee, and it seems that for whatever reason, maybe it is historical, that that we don't follow through with that position that we do with others, and that was the dint of my, that was the focus of my question. Why is this position handled differently?
I mean, there's no rationale or reason for
And
why.
I think you
Intentionally.
already answered it about it, but I just want to make that distinction.
Mark, is the special education parent advisory committee still active? CPAC?
So they are, they haven't been maybe as active as they could be, and I think COVID definitely took a lot of the energy out of that group, but that's something we'll make sure we want to re-energize. There's a parent from that group that's part of the
Okay,
panel
so some
today.
representation. That's great. Okay, thank you.
So we'll come up with a date, probably then no later than Tuesday. Because you're gonna likely have, and I don't think, since they're meeting on, what is tomorrow, Tuesday, I mean, I suppose we could meet as early as Thursday this week, or you could get that posted in time. So we could do,
I can't,
You can't do Thursday.
Well, my graduate program, and it's not anything I can juggle, so.
Yeah.
I could do Tuesday, could even,
Yeah,
Tuesday of Next week if we wanted to.
and I don't
just
know that
put
we
that
want to
on
do,
If anybody else
I
can.
don't know that we want to do Friday, but Friday's always a possibility too. You think next Tuesday's good? Okay.
Friday, you're
Yeah,
gonna-
Tuesday's fine.
Okay. And Tuesday, the whatever that is
21st.
it 21st?
Should we?
And what time would we want to do that? Would we want to do it
Is there a possibility with this group to do it any earlier than we need, like 5:30, or is it better if not? Just keep it at 6:30.
Good.
I can do 5:30.
Can people do
No, Tuesday. the
Tuesday.
22nd,
Tuesday, the 21st? Yeah, well, why don't we then shoot for 5:30?
5:30 to 6. If we have to.
Yeah, 5:30 to, we probably want to have a 30-minute interview and then maybe 5 minutes in between and then a 30-minute interview. So, So-
5:30 and 6:15.
yeah, 5:30 and 6:15 sounds, and then we'd make a decision that night.
You feel that no one wants to use this room or the auditorium?
I think this room's probably fine.
I don't know if it's a conflict or not, but that's the 8th grade celebration. I don't know if anybody here needs to go to that.
And is that it? That's at night?
That's it.
7th graders participated in the 8th grade celebration.
7th graders put on the after party for the grade celebration. I just wanted to put it out there.
And what time is that?
I do not
It's
know
just
that.
6 o'clock.
6 and
6 o'clock.
Ceremony, 7 is the dance.
Uh-huh.
Want to look at the 22nd? Since that's a concern or not? It's not a concern for me.
I would prefer the 21st unless somebody is under contract.
Let's do the 21st.
It works better for you.
All right.
All set?
Yes, so let's continue on with the hiring and vacancy updates. So in September of this year, Carrie Martinez resigned as a foreign language teacher, and Annie Fielding has been a long-term sub. That job has been posted. We've had 7 applicants, and using a screening rubric, 3 candidates were selected for interviews. On June 6th and 7th, 3 candidates were interviewed. 2 have been called back for demo teaching, as well as a tour and a conversation with Mr. Knievel at LMMHS, with the hope that the process will conclude this week. 5th grade, Helen Rock is retiring, and so Susan Love has been hired as 5th grade teacher for next year. And since Susan Love is moving to 5th grade, that opened up a Title I interventions position, where Susanna Keefe was a successful candidate in that search. Christine Kleinerman is retiring as a kindergarten paraprofessional. So after the school year wraps up, interviews will be held, and we're always still seeking more applicants. So if you know of anyone who would love to work in kindergarten, it's a great job. Could certainly use more applicants. Lori Goodfellow retired this year as our Director of Food Services, and so we hired Shannon Gagliardo to split the role between here and Lee. And her start date is in mid-August, but she's already been in the district meeting with Lori and learning about both districts and the systems, computer systems and ordering processes. And so we're really excited to have Shannon. She brings experience and a lot of energy to the position, which I think is going to be wonderful. Anna Van Lingen retired as a cook / supervisor at LMMHS. Christina DeRuin transferred to the position. Susie Bazek will transfer to LMMHS to fill Christina's current position. We still have 1 opening at LMHS for a food service professional. It's a 17.5-hour a week job. And we also have 2 openings at Morris. One is 25 hours a week and one is 17.5 hours a week. So again, if you know of anyone who would like to join us working in either one of our kitchens, we would love to have them. And then our bus / van driver, Linda Clifford, is retiring, or retired, sorry, in June of 2021, and Beth San Giovanni is going to fill that job, dependent on when she wraps up her training and licensure to operate the the bus slash van for the district. So that's a recap of the hiring and vacancy updates up and through today.
There's also a possibility that our high school principal is a finalist in Hull, Massachusetts for principalship. So that may be something that we will have to be filling as well. Mr. Knievel is a finalist for a position in Hull, Massachusetts. We found this out Thursday.
Okay.
And he's going to be finding out fairly soon, so that may be an open position as well.
We talk about what that process would look like. It seems like we'll potentially have to fill leadership at the high school, and in addition have a new incoming student services person, and we'll have very little tenure leadership across the district at that point. And I assume the principal search, for instance, would have to go on during the summer. How would we typically approach that?
That would typically be a committee that would involve teachers, parents,
Students.
perhaps school committee people, perhaps students. So that would be, so setting that up will be a little bit complex, but not but we couldn't move on anything like that until we know more about Mr. Knievel's situation. So again, that's something that we'll just need to wait and hear. It might require, we don't hire principals, the superintendent hires principals. But the whole process could involve us, because obviously that's a key position, and we would want to have input from this committee. So we'll look to Dr. Gosselin to give us some guidance as to when he knows, if and when he knows something, to then begin to set the process up and talk about,
And are there particular functions that the high school principal fills over the summer that we need to think about how else to?
So I think that's a good question. And obviously, if the principal opts to take this other position, that would be one of the discussions we would have in terms of how that would work, what work needs to be completed, who would do it, and then what the transition plan would be for whoever the successor would be, whether that's a new hire or interim in the meantime. There is work over the summer, and a lot of it is not done specifically by the principal, but there are, I think, projects that the principal oversees, right? So master scheduling, cleaning and preparation of the building, rostering of students to courses. A lot of that has already been done. So guidance does a lot of that piece, right? Planning the reopening, and then any other like staff work over the summer, that would be the work of the principal. Most of the principals also utilize part of the summer to enjoy some of their vacation days in their contract. So they generally take a couple of weeks for that too. So it's not something that I don't think we can't get past or can't get through, but obviously it's going to take some strategic conversations around making sure that any and all those things that need to be done ahead of time are planned. And we have key point people that we can look to do those roles. And if not, we may have to look to maybe pay a few extra hours for someone to come in and pick up some of that slack. Hopefully that's not the case, but definitely we'd be open to that if that's what we need to do to make sure that we have a strong transition and a smooth transition, and that we are ready to go for the fall. One of the big variables right now is also the switch over to Powerschool. So that's a movement from our old scheduling and student information software to a new platform. So again, a lot of sense. Everyone's sort of new to that. So obviously Randy's taking a big role in that, as well as the new hire Lily as well. So we'll work through that. And again, as soon as I hear from Mr. Knagle what his plans are, we're ready to start planning straight away. All right, next on the agenda is a annual requirement of the school committee to approve the school physicians contract, which is attached. And so again, this is to maintain our school physician and or someone from Berkshire Pediatrics to fulfill that role in his absence.
I just had a question. The cost of this contract has changed.
No.
So I would need a motion for this.
Yes.
I move that we approve the LPS physicians contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
All right. Similarly, there's another item that needs to be voted on tonight by the committee if they so choose, and that's a addendum to the contract, and kind of do this every year. And it's to pay or authorize the payment of all of our stipended positions at LMMHS and Morris. The reason this kind of takes place at this point of the year is because along the year, certain clubs are run that may be new, and certain ones that are on the books don't run. And so it gives us a chance just to kind of take a stock of where we are. And you'll see a lot of the clubs almost kind of seem redundant because they are in the contract, but we do want to make sure that we don't miss anything and that we accommodate any new clubs that were added during the course of the school year.
And this is also done because it affects, ultimately affects the Mass Teachers Retirement System. So anything that is in the contract, has to be voted on to, for someone to be able to actually then sometime later on in their career, have this be part of their compensation that's covered by Mass Teachers Retirement. So again, I'd accept a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract addendum.
I'll second that.
Any further conversation?
I have a question. In the second paragraph, the last sentence, which is in brackets, in bold print, to see the September 19 to August 31st, 22.
Right, but yes, because this is activities that have taken place up to now in this contract, but not the new contract that we'll be voting on later.
Oh, so this is just.
This is
adjusting
things
current
that happened this year.
Okay.
Yep. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, and then for the end of the year ceremonies, I think we talked about the majority of the ones that are taking place certainly at LMHS, but I'll just add to that as in years past, the fifth grade students at Morris will take their final walk through the Morris hallways beginning on June 22nd. The procession is expected to begin around 9:15 a.m. And so I'm really excited to get over and see what they do at Morris for fifth grade students, again, as they get ready to make the transition from Morris over to LMHS, where they'll join us next year's middle school. And that concludes my report.
Okay. So the next item of business is the approval of the LEA contract, the Unit A contract that has been ratified already by the LEA. last month at some point, or early this month. I don't remember exactly when they voted. And Mr. Ketchen is here because he votes on this also. And I will just run through the highlights. In the compensation area, the salary schedule will increase by 2.25% in year 1, 2% in year 2, and 2% in year 3. Steps 1 and 2 on the salary schedule will increase further to equal step 3, but all 3 steps will be the same. And so somebody who comes in at step 1 will, have the salary will go up by whatever the cost of living increase is, but essentially the first 3 steps will be the same. And then they'll, when they get to step 4, there will have been more of an incremental raise. The experience factor for teachers who are already on the highest step, which is step 18 in our contract, for at least 1 year will increase from $1,000 to $1,250 in the second year of the contract. So it'll be the same next year, but will increase in the second year. And then for teachers who've been on that step for 5 years, at least 5 years, it'll increase to $1,500 in year 3. The curriculum rate has increased from $30 an hour to approximately $45. It's now going to be linked to the bachelor's first step, as are many of the other things in the contract. This is a dollar amount that hasn't increased in 9 years. So now it's going to be indexed in a way that it will increase appropriately. And that will also cover teachers who are covering classes. The same rate will be used for that. The stipend for teaching an extra course section gets standardized and also linked to the bachelor's column. An extra course now will be paid in year 1 at $5,600. And if you looked at the various courses being taught this past year, I think there were 19 or 21 additional sections being taught. They range from $3,100 to $6,300, averaging about $5,000. So that's now indexed to the salary schedule. Nurses can now proceed all the way across the salary schedule. We have 2 nurses, and previously they were capped at the master's level. There's some additional stipends for some changes in some of the stipended positions and some new ones for 504 coordinators, language lab, VHS, Morris Math Club, and varsity lacrosse. We're going to be revisiting the coaching stipends sometime in 2 weeks, next week, end of next week. Think about the calendar here. Teachers will now have access to a paid parental leave upon the birth or adoption of a child. This benefit will allow teachers to take up to 20 consecutive days of paid leave within the first 12 weeks after a child's arrival, without drawing from personal days, medical leave, or the LEA sick bank. The total number of medical leave days available each year will decline from 17 to 15. However, unused days up to the total of 15 may be carried over to future years. And this was previously capped at 12. Teachers who use no medical or personal days in a school year will receive a bonus of $500 at year's end. Teachers using 5 or fewer will receive a bonus of $300. Teachers absent for more than 3 consecutive days will be required to provide a doctor's note upon request. This was previously more than 5 days. And then under professional responsibilities and professional development, the language has changed for responsibilities for all teachers will now include being available through the end of the student dismissal. Department chairs and team leaders will now teach full course loads, which would mean going from 4 periods to 5.
Department chairs.
I'm sorry.
Team leaders were always teaching.
Okay, department chairs. And there's also the definition of assignable duties has been changed, has been expanded to include class coverage. The work year will extend by 1 day, starting the last Monday in August rather than the last Tuesday. The first 3 days will be for orientation and professional development, followed by 2 half days for students with half days for professional development. So it will be a relatively speaking, kind of a softer opening for the students and get some of the professional development front loaded during the school year. And there'll be one other floating day professional development during the year, but no half days. The district will form a professional development committee through which administrators and teachers will collaborate to set the program for professional development. And teachers may be required to attend an after-school faculty meeting each month and up to 2 additional 1-hour meetings for professional development, curriculum department meetings, not to exceed a total of 15 over the course of the school year. And previously, this called for weekly 1-hour meetings. Now that's changed, and that was directly related to the work year being extended by 1 day. So the number of meetings during the school year, during each month, has been reduced, and that time has resulted in a additional professional development day. And prior to our voting, I want to thank Megan and Oren, Melissa and Mark, because we had 13 meetings, I think, in the end. And we spent from November, October. we met for a long time, and we had a great relationship with we had 5 teachers from the LEA who were part of it, along with Alex Lamalio, who's the representative from the MTA who works with our teachers. And it was a very collaborative process to get to this point. So I accept a motion to, do we call it ratifying when we do it? Who really knows? Yeah. I'd accept a motion for the school committee to approve the tentative agreement with the Lenox Education Association.
Is it the tentative agreement or is it the final?
To approve the agreement, I don't.
To make final decision. All right, I move that the Lenox School Committee approve the agreement reached with the LEA for the 2023 through 2025.
Yeah, it's 22-23 through 24-25. It's 3 years.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.
Okay, and I asked Amy to attach the school committee meeting schedule because we made changes in it last meeting. And I asked her to print hard copies so that we can all post them on our refrigerators. Thank you. Okay. So under new business, we have the assistant superintendent contract renewal, and this is required every time the contract is up for, a new round. It won't be something we have to do every year, but anytime it's up for renewal. And so her contract, has a few changes in it. One, this would be a 4-year contract beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2026. Her current salary is $130,000. It'll receive a 5% increase. There'll be an added clause for experience factor and retirement benefit that were discussed with the previous superintendents when she was hired, but weren't appropriate to be in the contract at that time, be in this contract. And there'll be some flexibility for working remotely. So this would require a motion, and then we can discuss the aspects of it we'd like to discuss.
I'll move that we approve the assistant superintendent's contract renewal.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
How long have you been here, Melissa? I was trying to remember.
It'll be 3 years in November, so just over 2.5.
So we're going from a 3-year contract to now a 4-year.
Right. And that's subject to, our discussion. If we want to go 3, we can do 3. But
I personally feel comfortable with 4 years. You feel comfortable.
Is the type the same? Or
Yes.
yeah, there would be, they'd like to have a slight title change to reflect what the job actually is, and I don't recall what that is.
Also, change it from business to finance. and operations.
Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, rather than Business and Operations.
So this is the second time tonight I've heard about a professional staff position changing title
Well, it's,
or changing responsibilities possibly. And maybe
I don't think it's changing responsibilities. It's just changing to be more reflective.
so per our policy, the school committee is supposed to review all professional staff positions and free. And we are supposed to be presented with a job description that matches that title. I don't mean to sound like a stickler on it, but it is, it's our policy GCA. This came up last year too. I think it's only fair to ask us if we know what we're voting.
Okay, so we can stay with the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations.
I mean, I'm fine. I have no problem changing it if it's our needs and we'd love to have a speaker on board.
No, I'm fine with business as well. It's just a word.
Okay,
And if in some way in the process of the last 2.5 years and 3, the duties change in such a way that we do need to update that, I think it makes sense. I mean, we're not looking for busy work, but if there is a sense that in the transition, I mean, our previous finance director or whatever the title was at that point, business director, was with us for a very long time. So then you come in and just in the change of so many things, if the description changes, perhaps we put that on our list to review as a policy and get that done. That's a good idea. Because we should update those periodically. Those job descriptions often, it's just too much work to do, so we don't get to those, but it's a good idea. And maybe the HR committee could look at that. It's something to do.
any further comments? Hearing none. Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay, superintendent evaluation was not completed. I didn't have all the information I needed to complete it, so.
In other words, he's waiting for mine.
You have to fall on your sword.
And so that will be done at a later meeting. 10th grade civics projects. Sarah Hamilton, along with the new requirement for civics in the middle and high school, the 10th graders have a civics project, and you'll see from the first document under that she's kind of outlined what the project was that kids needed to do. This was her project. I mean, it may have come from the state, but this is her creation of the project she wanted the kids to do. And, she emailed me, and maybe Mark also, that some students would be submitting projects to us because they might be something that the committee needed to discuss at some point. And Ian Bridges, who I found out via his project, who lives around the corner from me and walks home through the intersection of Housatonic and East Street, has encouraged us to look at the safety of that and work on changing that because of the fatalities that have occurred there in recent years. It's a intersection I run through all the time, and I will say I'm trying to be very careful when I get down to the bottom of East Street and have to cross. And I responded to him and said that I hope he was talking with Chief O'Brien as well, and the town manager, because obviously some of this stuff is not really totally within our, we can push for it perhaps, but it's not within our jurisdiction to make a major change at that intersection. And then Tegan Maximilian he wrote to us in an area that we could have some input on. She's been studying the idea of the high school kids starting later and the elementary kids starting earlier, which has been something that's been discussed for many, many, many years around the country in different districts. And she was thinking that maybe we could actually have something in place for next year, which I don't think is realistic, but for next year, but possibly in the future. And she mentioned in her report that Northampton High School has done this. I don't know what other high schools in Massachusetts have done this. I know that it's controversial because now you have elementary kids starting earlier in the day, and during some months that puts them at a time when there's not a lot of light out. And then at the other end is the high school kids in sports. And being in sync with other towns on sports, can get problematic. So it's the kind of thing that's difficult to do unless it's in concert with other schools, but it's definitely something that we could, this is the first time someone's really asked us. Well, I don't know if it's the first time, maybe during your years on the committee, maybe somebody asked this. It's come up off and on, but I don't know that it's formally come up the way Tegan's presented it. And so I wanted you to see these because these are, the kids are really reaching out and doing a civic project that is not insignificant. And I don't know what the other, I guess every 10th grader takes this, so there's probably 60 kids doing civic projects. I thought we might have 10 that came to us, we got 2. But I think it's a great thing because it's getting kids involved in their community in ways where they have to actually go through this multi-step process and then come up with a project or plan to move forward. So, I'm really, I thank Sarah Hamilton for sending this stuff to us and getting us involved because this is I think an important learning step for kids in high school.
Yeah, the letters were really well reasoned and written, so. I'm
Yeah.
quite interested.
Yeah, they were excellent.
Good job.
So that said, that's all I have except for the executive session. And I would like to have someone make a motion that we will go to into executive session with no intent to return to public session to discuss litigation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just said so moved, I was being a little lazy.
Yeah.
You want to say the whole thing? I move to adjourn to executive session with no intent to return to public meeting for the purpose of discussion of litigation.
Okay, so we need to take a roll call vote to go into executive session.
David Rimler, aye.
Veronica Pence and I.
Bob Vaughn, aye.
Megan Kirby, I.
Christine Morrow, I.
Okay.
You all.